Chapter 3. "Remember the old Bond films?" Malik said wistfully. He was adjusting his new gold-plated watch, rotating a dial around the face like a combination lock he'd forgotten how to open. Simpler times, the 60s and 70s. Those movies didn't represent the technology of the era exactly, but they weren't far off. Exploding watches, cars with missile launchers, ski poles that turned into guns. Malik sat a few rows up from the only other passenger in the brightly lit fuselage, Agent Seyfried, who was poring through reams of documents on a small fold-out table. A heavy fog had descended onto the tarmac. They were waiting for it to clear before takeoff. Seyfried let out a groan designed to let his partner know he wasn't in the mood for conversation, and then begrudgingly said, "Yes, I've seen all the 007 films, and Bourne, and Mission Impossible, and Kingsman, and every television show about spies. What's your point?" "My point," Malik replied, "is that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." He strolled down the aisle and dropped into a seat across from his reluctant partner. Seyfried pretended not to notice he had company. "Don't you find it a bit strange that we've both been assigned to this mission?" Malik said. "Magic exists. Of everything I've learned in the last few years, this mission is the least of the strangeness." It was a basic task requiring a basic solution. A snatch and grab like this should have been child's play, but Malik was being forced to tag along for some other reason. He just wasn't sure if Seyfried knew what that reason was. Malik reclined his seat and laced his fingers behind his head. "Any text from Amanda since the briefing?" Seyfried refused to look up from his paperwork. "Nope." "I noticed you texting someone earlier." "So you're spying on me now?" "Well, we are the CIA, in case you've forgotten." "It was my fiancée." Seyfried slapped his binder shut. "She likes to wish me luck before I start a new mission." "Clever strategy. Make it personal so it will be socially awkward to pursue with any further inquiries." John must have forgotten who he was up against. Malik had grown fond of spycraft and thoroughly enjoyed a rousing brawl when the situation called for it. Gunfights and hand-to-hand combat were enthralling, and he'd become steadily more proficient at both. But this was the part he enjoyed most. The chess game. The cerebral maneuvering. He might not be the most accurate shot in the agency, and he didn't have any black belts to his credit. But when it came to mental warfare, he was a 5-star general. "Sweet of her," Malik said. He feigned a yawn. "By the way, how is Caroline's health these days? Any improvements?" Seyfried glared across the aisle, jaw tightly clenched, nostrils flaring. How the hell did he know about my fiancé's illness? He must have been wondering. The answer, of course, was that Malik stayed one step ahead of the sharks at the CIA by studying their every move. In fact, he knew more about the personal affairs of his fellow Father Division agents than he did about the Scriveners they were tasked with apprehending. The best reason to dig up dirt on your coworkers was blackmail, or, at the very least, to level the playing field in the eventuality that you were being blackmailed yourself. Mutually assured destruction was a reliable deterrent, more of an insurance policy than anything. Being conscripted into a clandestine government agency because of your magical abilities was inconvenient enough. Having a rival agent attempt to undermine your progress by threatening to air some dark little secret you'd been hiding was something else entirely. Years of stolen documents had yielded a veritable cornucopia of drugs, debauchery, and tax evasion, not to mention a certain cyber threat analyst whose annual trips to Thailand were most certainly not embarked on for sightseeing purposes. If Jerry's wife only knew. Conversely, Agent Seyfried was squeaky clean. Not a single professional infraction, not a personal issue, not an unpaid parking ticket to his name. His life played out like a bland suburban fairy tale leading down the path to an unremarkable happily ever after. John W. Seyfried met Caroline Mott 4 years ago, a svelte Barbie to his ruggedly handsome kin, and before long they were engaged, no doubt looking forward to the house with a white picket fence and a minivan filled with screaming pink babies. A month after she plucked a tasteful half-carat diamond ring from a champagne flute and promised to be his lawfully wedded, some test results came back. Pancreatic cancer, Aggressive, stage 3. Better than stage 4, though that wasn't much cause for celebration. Yes, it was a little tacky to poke at an open wound, but that was all part of being an agent. Finding a pressure point and squeezing. Malik would never break someone like Seyfried, but if he could force him to squirm, just a little, he might extract the kernel he'd been searching for. Seyfried turned to face Malik, heat rising in his face. Caroline is fine. She's in remission. He added a stiff, "Thanks for asking," which sounded a lot more like, "If you say her name again, I'll rip your lungs out through your throat." Malik clapped his hands. "Ah, good to hear. When the stewardess makes her rounds, we'll toast Caroline's health and good fortune." "This flight is for work. There aren't any stewardesses." Malik stuck his head into the aisle and glanced curiously one way and the other. "Then who was the lovely woman strolling around a moment ago?" "The one who went into the cockpit? That was the pilot." "But there's a bar in the back. I saw it when they were loading our equipment." "No booze, though. Joe's orders." "Well, that's a shame. Thankfully, I came prepared." Malik pulled a flask from his inside pocket and unscrewed the cap. "Perhaps we can locate some glasses." Seyfried grumbled, "I'll pass," and returned to his mountain of paperwork. Malik took a swig of his favorite Irish whiskey and made a mental note. Staff all Father Division flights with stewardesses from now on and ensure the bar is stocked with nothing but premium brands. If you're going to be saving the world on a regular basis, you might as well do it in style. Seyfried continued pouring through his reams of paper as if he'd be quizzed on them in the morning, but this was an open and shut case. This ridiculous Finn character studied landscape architecture at Louisiana Tech. So what? He picked up a few landscaping jobs to pay bills in between benders? Not helpful. He was little more than a lucky sod who may or may not have been using magic to track down treasure. Nothing in these folders was going to make this mission any easier. The jet motored down the runway, took flight, and burst through the canopy of steel gray clouds, revealing the sun that had been banished for most of Virginia's spring season. The lovely pilot turned off the seatbelt sign and announced that passengers could roam freely about the cabin. Malik stood, stretched out his arms, and asked Seyfried if he needed anything from the back. He received a groan in response. It was going to be a long flight. Malik threw open the curtains in the back of the aircraft, where a quartet of lockboxes had been stacked. One of the most pleasantly Bond-like aspects of Father Division was the pre-mission prep, where agents ventured down to Subbasement 7 and into the Candy Store, the CIA's closely guarded arsenal of magical weapons and gadgets. Techno-alchemy, mostly. Aside from a strategic upgrade to his watch, Malik hadn't signed anything out. A reliable handgun often did the trick and was surprisingly effective against a majority of magic practitioners. It was amusing to watch a novice rattle off a few rusty words of Aramaic while they drew a sigil on their palm, only to be shocked back to reality when a bullet pierced their kneecap. Magical encounters were literally a game of quick draw, especially since most spells required both a sigil, a magic symbol drawn with either ink or blood, and a corresponding series of words to activate it. What most amateurs failed to take into account was that, long before they could pull the trigger on whatever silly little enchantment they had up their sleeve, an agent could pull the trigger on their Desert Eagle. The crates occupied most of the storage space. Malik preferred to travel light, but his partner packed like a pop diva on a weekend trip to the Hamptons. He flipped the latches on the first crate. Grenades, a sniper rifle, binoculars, handguns, ammo. Nothing out of the ordinary. A second crate revealed some items of the mystical variety, including bullets that could incapacitate with an icy cold burst, freezing a victim in place, leftover fox tech that the boys had been tinkering with. There were also a trio of syringes filled with radioactive green liquid. Oddly, Malik didn't recall ever seeing them on Sublevel 7. A new addition to the candy store? Malik turned and peered through a wafer-thin slit in the curtains. Seyfried was still seated halfway up the fuselage, rifling through paperwork. He returned to the crate and stripped apart the gray foam padding. Nestled deep in the thick, cushiony subsection was a rectangular device roughly the size and shape of an old VCR. Post-mortem ocular reflection tech, which, as far as Malik knew, was to be used only in the CIA's morgue. It had never been taken into the field. Why would it? Seifert was expecting to remove the eyes from a corpse during this mission and planned to use the PMOR device to extract information from them, which meant he expected Malik to die in the next 48 hours, or was counting on it.